Who else is excited to be here today? I am so pumped for this session. I have literally been looking forward to this for the past few weeks. So you have no idea how amazing this is. So I hope you're having a great time. Ben gave a wonderful keynote and the insights were just incredible. So without wasting much time, I would like to thank Apisec University for extending the invitation for me to speak at the event today. It is quite incredible, and I'm so honored to be here. Doing this with you all, of course. So we're in this together. So API sprawl, a core challenge in modern API paint testing. I think the first question that would come to mind is why API sprawl? I could have spoken about anything, right? I could have chosen to speak about API hacking or anything, but I decided to speak about API sprawl. So, what was the idea behind it? Well, there's just one answer. API sprawl doesn't get talked about enough. It doesn't get the attention it deserves. And you'd see why in some few minutes. When you talk about API sprawl, you're going to look at how it has affected organizations, the negative consequences of API sprawl, and we're going to consider some case studies on how major organizations, now I'm not talking about small organizations, I'm talking about Fortune 500 companies, how they've been affected by API sprawl. Then we're going to look at the impact of API sprawl on pen testing. Of course, we need to know what impact it has on our pen testing engagement. Then finally, we're going to also look at how to overcome API sprawl and pen testing. I'm not going to dish out the negativity about API sprawl and just leave you hanging. So I'm going to talk to you about how you can actually deal with API sprawl in your organization, in your pen testing engagement. And the reason why API sprawl is so important is because like I mentioned, it doesn't get the much needed attention. I remember when I first came across API Sprawl, I was quite a little bit confused as to what it meant. So I had to go on YouTube to research, and I discovered that there weren't so much resources on API Sprawl. The only resource, in-depth resource I could find was one by Apisec University that Bill Duffield from Nordic API had to come in to talk about API Sprawl. So from there, I was able to like build on it and actually do my research. So it was quite shocking how little organizations know about what API sprawl is. So we're going to look at the consequences of API sprawl. So a little bit about me. Christina's given a great introduction. Thank you so much. My name is Damilola, and um, somehow I think I wear this hoodie an unhealthy amounts of time. But then how else would I show that I'm a proud student of Apostec University? I'm a proud student of Apostec University, and I started my career with learning from them. Literally, it literally changed everything for me. It has led me to come up with my own newsletter, API Security Today, which of course you can subscribe to. We're looking for new crew members to join us. It's an amazing crew right here. And I am a security consultant at Ethnos Cyber Limited, where I consult for Africa's first SaaS and DAS tool, Aquila, which is a mobile application security platform to test for vulnerabilities in mobile application. And also we have uh, Africa's first security awareness training platform, Castellum. So if you want to learn more about the solutions that we're working on at Ethnos, you can always reach out to me. I'm more than happy. We're not supposed to promote anything, and I'm not going to do that here. Okay, what do we see here? I know we have a number of Stranger Things fan in the session today, and I wanted to see how to relate API sprawl with something that we all can relate with. And I couldn't think of anything other than from Stranger Things because I'm a big fan of Stranger Things, right? So in this picture here, we can see Will Byers in the restroom. It looks literally Okay, I mean, I'm not expecting you to find something out of the ordinary because there's nothing extraordinary about this picture. But one thing about Stranger Things is the upside down, right? So that's where the horrible things go wrong. That's why we get the Demogorgons, we get the monsters, we get the horrible things that, haunt Hawkins and lie beneath the surface of Hawkins. But the truth about this is most organizations, the API ecosystem is just like this. This is what they think that their API look like. They feel that their APIs are okay, they have everything documented, they don't have any shadow APIs. They basically think everything is running fine. But the reality is, beneath that surface, they have undocumented APIs, they have shadow APIs, they have hidden endpoints, and all the horrible stuff you can think about APIs there. So, what can they do about it? And let's even make it more substantial by looking at reports from statistics. In 2024, the Postman State of API report, I'm not going to really bore you with this, trust me, they discovered that currently we have over 200 million APIs worldwide. And that was in 2024, so it could have increased by now. And out of those 200 million APIs, 1 in 5 APIs are shadow APIs, as you can see right here by the report done by Salt Security in 2024. Now, what's even more shocking is the fact that only 10% of organizations actually fully document their APIs, according to the Enterprise Management Associations. So that means we have about 90 organizations not having comprehensive overview of what their API ecosystem is. And this can lead to drastic consequences. And don't take my word for it, right? We're going to see organizations who have actually fallen victims to API sprawl. Now, what is the technical definition of API sprawl? So, according to some AI out there, API sprawl refers to the uncontrolled and often unmonitored growth of APIs across a system. Now, the two keywords I want us to look at here is uncontrolled. Oh, sorry. I was trying to get my highlighter right. Okay. So we have uncontrolled and we have unmonitored. Awesome. Now, does this mean that you can have a growing API ecosystem? No, that's not what it means, right? What it means that if you have an API ecosystem that you can't control anymore, or you don't even have how to monitor their growth, then it can be said you have API sprawl. So I've had a lot of people come up to say, how do I know my organizations have API sprawl, or how do I know that I'm dealing with API sprawl? Well, it's just one question. Can you confidently list all of the APIs you have in your environment? If you can confidently list it, that means you have API sprawl. And API sprawl is being contributed through the adoption of microservices. Now we find organizations with so many developers, so many programming languages all coming together to build one application. Awesome. But this can mean what? Several endpoints, several APIs just flying around. We also have, the evolving tech stack, amongst other things, third party risk or third party integration that you have to integrate into your APIs as well. So all this contributes to a spiraling growth of your API ecosystem. Now, how has this affected some organizations? Well, I have created some case studies that we can learn from. The first one here is X, which was formerly known as Twitter, and what really happened to them. So in 2022, as you can see from the snapshot that I have from this news story, they experienced a data breach and exposed personal information of 5.4 million users, including their phone numbers, their email addresses, amongst other things. Now, what really happened? How did it even happen? They had a growing scattered API ecosystem, and this made it nearly impossible for them to enforce consistent security standards across all their endpoints. So, attackers found a way in, they exploited the fragmentation, and because of this, security was able to slip through the gaps. So we've seen the impact of this, right? And how it affected them. It's damaged their Twitter reputation at that time. And of course, highlighted how poor API security can lead to massive data breaches. Now we have Facebook beta now, right? And what happens to Facebook? In 2018, they also suffered a breach. But this was even bigger because this affected about 50 million users worldwide. So if you were using Facebook at that time, you were probably affected by this as well. So how did attackers actually exploit vulnerability? Well, they were able to use the view as feature. I'm not quite sure if you remember the view as feature of Facebook, and this allowed them to obtain access tokens and impersonate other users, right? And this breach was traced back to an API endpoint that was just off your radar. So it wasn't completely or properly secured. And this led to a lot of regulatory scrutiny and, of course, user backlash. We have quite a number of organizations too that have fallen victims to API sprawl, but I'm not going to dwell too much on them. If you want to learn more about this, you can, go online to read more about this. We have Uber in 2016. They had a shadow API that led to a data breach. We have Pala in 2021 as well, and Panera in 2018. These organizations all point to the fact that API sprawl is something that you need to start paying attention to if you're not already doing so. Now that we've seen the way organizations have dealt with API sprawl, we want to look at the impact of API sprawl on pen testing. How does it affect the pen test engagement? Well, I have created four major impacts. It's not exhaustive. This is just an highlight of what we could talk about. But trust me, there are way more impacts than this. And the lack of visibility. Now, lack of visibility, I don't think I have to talk so much about this because it literally just explains itself. If you don't have visibility into what's actually out there, how can you even protect it? Obviously, you cannot protect what you don't know. So, a good example is this picture. So, if you cover your eyes, right, you obviously can't see what's in front. Or if you just take an hair and just cover here, you can't see what's right here. So that's so like API sprawl. If you have no documentation whatsoever, that means you have no visibility. You're literally testing in the dark. You can't see anything, which is like way worse, right? You don't want to be like that. But if you have partial documentation, right? So you get to see some, you get to oversee some APIs in your environment, but you're not aware of some other APIs that could be exposed to the public and you don't pay attention to them. It could be those APIs you're not paying attention to that are actually vulnerable. But the ones you're paying attention to, you're like, oh, you're fine, you're okay, there's nothing actually wrong with it, you feel safe. But that's a false sense of security, right? So, lack of visibility is really, really a great problem. And this has even been heightened by the fact that traditional security tools do not really help with this because what most of them do is to just enumerate your existing endpoints. But you can hardly find security tools out there that can actually go as far as enumerating shadow APIs or hidden endpoints, right? So today we have solutions, we have AI security tools that are actually doing that. They're actually embedding such solution, but you might want to speak with your vendor if you have maybe a WAF vendor to see if they have such such feature embedded in that. Then API inventories. This is the foundation of everything we're discussing here. Your API inventory is like a blueprint for how your API ecosystem looks like. So if you get your API inventory wrong, then there's 100% chance that your report or your pen testing report will be skewed because you're not getting an accurate overview of what you actually have in your APIs. So you could have API list that you probably created maybe 6 months ago. But if you work in a high paced environment where you're constantly shipping new features, new products, then it could be outdated, right? Because you're not adding the new APIs that you have created into the list. So you could be using version 5, but you still have version 1 in existence, just out there exposed to the public. So you're not accurately, having an oversight of your API inventory. And this also has made it to OWASP API top 10, which is improper asset management. It used to be improper inventory management as well, but this just goes to show that API inventory is something that you really, really need to pay attention to. So you don't get API sprawl in your environment. Now, increased testing surface area. Okay, so I think this pretty much explains itself. The more APIs you have, the more your attack vectors, increase, right? So with each API that you're developing comes with each unique vulnerabilities. So they could have broken authentication, BOLA, could be anything, security misconfiguration, what have you, right? So the more APIs you're adding to your application or to your inventory, right, the more you're opening attack surfaces. So if you have 10 APIs, there are chances that 5 APIs are, you know, riddled with vulnerabilities. If you have 20 APIs, the chances you could have like 13 APIs that are vulnerable. So depending on how large your API base is, that will determine, how large your vulnerabilities or attack surface area would grow. So we need to be more careful about, adding new APIs that are not really, really important. Because if you're adding features, it comes with APIs. If you're adding functions, it also comes with APIs. Now, operational challenges for paint testers. Now, I'm looking at these from the perspective of a paint testers because it's really one of the things that gets under your skin. It's frustrating, emotionally draining. It's really, really, really annoying, right? Because you could have an API list given to you, and they could have sworn that that's everything. That's all the API endpoints they have and everything. And then you go testing, you spend your time testing, 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 only to discover that they're actually hidden endpoints that you had no idea about. So now you have to go back to retest. And it's just so frustrating because those endpoints are not getting the scrutiny that they need, but you're there testing the same endpoint over and over again. So it can be a really big operational challenge for pen testers in that it can be so, so frustrating dealing with an environment that has API sprawl. Now, to the bone of contention, why are we here today? Of course, to talk about API sprawl, but we also need to look at how to overcome API sprawl because, like I said, I'm not just going to leave you hanging, tell you that you have API sprawl and then you can just go. No. So I'm here to break it down to you step by step how you can actually overcome API sprawl in pen testing. And I have done a breakdown of this in phases. So we have 6 phases here, from the discovery phase to inventory, governance, monitoring, education, continuous improvement phase. And under each phase, we have steps we can actually take to deal with API sprawl. So it might see me looking at my screen here because I have some tools that I really want to be accurate on. So okay, so the first thing you want to do, of course, is to discover your APIs. You want to start from the known to the unknown. So, what APIs are currently existing in your environment? You want to gather all API specifications from sources like Open API documentation or whatever API specification you use. It could be Postman collections or even internal documentation. So you want to check your API gateways as well. You want to look at them, see what APIs you have registered there. You want to, of course, just bring them and just have them somewhere. Then what you're going to have to do next is to use automated discovery tools. right? So we have tools like Burp Suite, we have WhatsApp, or even Postman that can help you with scanning your network and applications. Then you want to scan live API traffic using monitoring tools like Wireshark, we have Feedla, we have Zik. So what you want to do is to take the existing APIs you have and run these automated discovery tools. They're calling network traffic, they're saying the API endpoints. You're cross-referencing them. So the APIs I have here, what is missing? You see one that you don't have in your documentation, you add it to it. It's that simple, right? So what you're doing is just trying to get as much visibility into the APIs that you have. So you have network discovery tools that can help you with that. You also want to analyze their code and logs. So most times developers, what they do is sometimes when they write their codes, they put the API endpoints that you're calling in your source code. So you may want to go through your code base and also use static code analysis tools like Checkmarx as well to check for API endpoints within your code base as well. And AppSec has a really great scanner. I think they talked about it during the keynotes, the opening address. So you want to check that out. It's a very great tool that you have, and it's free. So it's free. Anytime someone comes to me and be like, "Oh, I don't think I can. Security tools are expensive." I'm like, "Have you tried AppSec? It's actually free, so you don't have an excuse not to test your APIs anymore." All right. So you also would want to engage with your development teams, all right? Because they're the ones at the forefront of developing your applications. And one thing I notice is, I don't know why that happens, but developers and security teams, they obviously don't get along. I don't know why. Like, can somebody tell me why there's this cat and mouse relationship between developers and security teams? But if you want to have a great um, API inventory, you're going to want to increase the intensity of your relationship with your developers because they are the ones building these APIs. They know all the API endpoints and they can help you identify the hidden APIs and bring them into your security framework. So we also, once you're done with the discovery phase, you've done all this little things we mentioned here, we want to go into the inventory stage and cataloging phase. So what are you doing in this stage? So now that you have all your APIs discovered, the next step you want to do is to have a single source of truth. That is so important, to have a single source of. So you can use centralized tools like Swagger Hub. We have Postman API Network, or we even have API platform management like RPG, Kong, or AWS API Gateway. We have quite a number, so you can go online to research which one you'd prefer and start using them, right? So what you're going to do is to properly document every API. You're including details like endpoint URLs, you're including authentication methods, the request and response formats, and of course, the usage policy of the API endpoints. Now, governance and standardization phase. Now, this phase is so vital because if you don't have governance, API sprawl would get worse over time. So we need governance to actually you know, level it, just level it. So here, this is where you're defining policies, you're enforcing standards like ensure that APIs remain manageable and secure. So you're going to have to establish clear guidelines for your API design. You want to preach a security first approach and you want to ensure that everyone has a great understanding of documentation best practices. Then you're going to use industry standards like RESTful APIs, Open API, or GraphQL, depending on your code. Whatever it is you're using, just make sure you're using it the right way and you're doing the right thing. Then it's not enough for you to just define the policies. You need to implement them, right? So it's one thing to define it, is also another thing to implement them. So if you have a big organization, you can have API governing boards or processes that actually oversee API development. from the beginning to when it's deprecated or retired. So, and what this does is it helps you have an oversight on your APIs and ensure that you know everything going on from the beginning through the end. So you also want to adopt API security best practices, like I mentioned. You want to make use of API security tools. I mentioned quite a few, like AppSec. We have Salt Security, No Name Security, amongst others. You might want to look it up. And of course, regularly scan your APIs for misconfigurations. It's one thing to have the tool. Do you actually use it, right? So you have to make sure you use the security tools you have. Then moving on to monitoring and optimization phase. Now this phase it's so vital because um, API security is not just a one of thing. And if you want to put API sprawl in check, you need to ensure that you do a continuous monitoring of your environments to ensure that they remain secure and well maintained. So here we have quite a number of tools that you can use, like Grafana, we have Prometheus, Datadog, to help you track API performance and their usage. And you can also set up alerts for unusual activities, security threats, or performance degradation using the security tools that you have. And then regular audits need to be conducted. So you want to periodically review your API inventory to ensure that they remain compliant, right? And with security and governing policies. So um, use use automated discovery tools to detect any new or undocumented APIs that may have emerged in your environment. So we have education. Now, this is strictly an organization thing because you need to train your developers and teams. They need to know what you're looking out for. Most of them really care about security, but they don't know how to go about it. So you have to train them, not just the developers now, you're training your entire team because it's a collective effort. Security is not the developers' problem, really. It's not just the developers' problem, it's everyone's problem in the organization. So you're training your key stakeholders on API based security practices. You're offering hands on training to them on how to use API security tools and management platforms. Trust me, once the key stakeholders know how to make use of security tools, they will continue to do so. So you have to ensure that you educate them. Then foster collaboration. I mentioned that there's always this frictional relationship between developers and security professionals. So what you want to do is fix it. You have to fix that. If you have a situation like that in your organization, you just have to find a way to fix it, right? And ensure that there's an open communication between all the key stakeholders in your organization. These are the people that are developing your application. So if you don't have a good relationship with them, at the end of the day, it's coming to bite you, right? So try to foster open communication between the key stakeholders in your organization. And you can use shared tools like Postman or Swagger Hub to streamline communication or whatever communication channel that you use in your organization, right? Then we have communication of policies. You have to effectively communicate policies to the team because the way you're going to talk to someone in the leadership position might not be the same way you would talk to someone in the technical position. So you have to be able to speak their language. Um, the business leaders are looking at the impact it would have on the businesses if they're going to lose money. So you might want to look at that in that aspect, right? And not talking about how API security policies are important and all of that. They don't really care about those technical jargons, to be honest, right? So ensure you communicate your policies effectively so that everyone understands how serious this is. And of course, ensure that they follow API governance policy standards. Okay, moving on to the sixth one, which is also the final one, we have continuous improvement phase. Now, continuous, right? Not just improvement phase. Continuous is so it means it's ongoing. It's not something you just do and you forget. It's something you completely or continuously do. So here you're regularly collecting feedback from your developers, your security teams, and your business stakeholders. So when you get your feedback, you don't just say, "Oh, okay, yeah, I hear you. I think those feedbacks are great," and you don't do anything. Of course not. You have to use your insights, the feedback you get from them, to actually help redefine your API design, right? So you might have to go back to your API design to actually make some changes. It could be in terms of your security posture or your governance processes. So you want to ensure that you're continuously gathering feedback from these key stakeholders. This is what will help you to, continually stay updated. Of course, staying updated on API security trends as well is also important because cybersecurity as a whole, it's a dynamic field. It's always changing. What you know today might be obsolete tomorrow. So you have to continuously equip yourself with what's happening, emerging threats, industry trends, and best practices to follow in API security. OWASP, they're always, releasing new versions. So you want to ensure that, you're up to date with the latest version of the OWASP API top thing. Then, of course, you need to iterate and improve. So, API, like I mentioned, is a continuous cycle of discovery, governance, monitoring, and improvement. So, you want to regularly update your processes to ensure that they address new challenges and help keep your APIs secure and efficient. So those are the six phases you actually need to follow. Once you follow these six phases, trust me, you would have API sprawl under control, right? Now, in summary, what have I been talking about? We have looked at the challenges of API sprawl, where we looked at limited visibility. If you don't have visibility into what you have in your API ecosystem, you can actually protect it. So you need to have a comprehensive oversight of what you have. But this has become a problem for API sprawl because you get no visibility or limited visibility into your API ecosystem. Then incomplete testing or fragmented testing. If your API documentation or your API inventory is not accurate, then you're not going to be completely testing all your APIs, right? Because you're definitely going to be missing some out. So this is also a very big challenge that comes with API sprawl. You're not completely testing everything you have in your APIs. Then operational roadblocks, we saw how it can be so challenging for pen testers, how it can be so frustrating and emotionally draining, having to do with an environment that has API sprawl in them. And to tackle API sprawl, we considered some API discovery tools that we could make use of, like Burp Suite or WebZap, amongst others. We also looked at how to manage our API inventories, ensuring that we have all our documented APIs in check, defining our APIs accurately, everything in place, endpoint URLs and their usage, everything we have them accurately documented. So we have a single source of truth. Then collaboration is key. I think I emphasized on this a lot, how you need to collaborate with every stakeholder in your organization, because if you don't collaborate with them, then you can't do this alone. So you need everyone to be on deck to actually have a great API inventory. Then routine audits, this can be done periodically, depending on how your environment is. So it's important for you to conduct routine audits, because with routine audits, you get to see what's missing, what needs to be added. Do you have APIs that you need to deprecate? Do you have APIs you need to actually strengthen the security and all this? So That's basically everything you need to know. And with that, I hope I've been able to convince you and not confuse you that API sprawl is so important and you should start paying attention to it if you're not already doing so.